Welcome back to another edition of the Prepper Recon Podcast. Our mission is to bring you great interviews with preppers from around the world so you can be better informed and better prepared for everything from a hurricane to the end of the world as we know it. Today's guest is Sean of the SGT Report, and he's also the creator of the alternative news aggregation site, The Liberty Mill. Sean, thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to come on the show.
Thank you, Mark.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you on. So, what are your thoughts on the mass refusals by Connecticut citizens to register their firearms?
Well, I do have something to say about that, but if you don't mind, I'd really like to start with talking about what happened at CPAC this weekend, because I think it really warrants conversation. And did you follow the results at all at CPAC?
I did. I saw that Rand Paul got the highest amount in the straw poll, which, you know, he's a little bit more of a politician than his father, but I'll have to say, I think he's probably the cleanest dirty shirt. And you're either going to wear a dirty shirt in politics or you're going to walk around naked, I guess.
Yeah, that's an interesting way to put it. And, you know, I wrote a piece today at SGT Report called Before the Lamestream Mockingbird Media Tells You the CPAC Straw Poll Doesn't Matter. Read this. And, you know, the point of the piece was to not only talk about the fact that Rand Paul took first on the straw poll at CPAC and Ted Cruz took second, but really the point of the story is to talk about the fact that today at Drudge Report, Matt Drudge did a CPAC-type poll in which he asked people to pick their candidate out of all of those same folks that were, you know, possibilities to be voted for at CPAC. And the Drudge Report poll, with, at that point in the afternoon, 250,000 votes, so this is no small sampling of quote-unquote fringe folks, Rand Paul was in first with 30% of the vote, and Ted Cruz was in second with 28% of the vote. And it's interesting, that's all I reported on. I'm not endorsing Rand Paul, but I think that it is a fundamental indication of a sea change that's happening in this country, that people like Chris Christie, Marco Rubio, Jeb Bush, and the rest of the Republican establishment trolls all were in low single digits. This is extremely important, and I made note of it today at SGT Report, and you would not believe the vitriol I received in the comment section by people that are absolutists and believe that, oh, you know, Ron Paul is a establishment hack, he's a controlled opposition, and his son is even worse. And it's like, look, you know, I think there comes a time for people to live in reality or live in this fantasy world of absolutism. And it drives me crazy because what I see happening at CPAC and what I see happening with the Drudge Report poll is a sea change where the mainstream Mockingbird media does not control the conversation anymore. And they're going to come out and they're going to label Rand Paul as quote unquote a contender. And they're going to say that straw poll isn't really any reflection of reality. Meanwhile, Drudge does the poll with 250,000 plus respondents, and we see the same numbers with the same establishment Republican hacks getting single digits. And the reason I wanted to bring it up is because what I was seeing in the comment section today at SGT Report were people saying, Rand Paul's not the answer. He's controlled opposition. He's compromised. He's a hack. And what we need is a revolution. Well, let's paint the picture of revolution then, shall we? Because what I see happening is a grassroots, organic, honest revolution of libertarian-minded, constitutionally minded, Bill of Rights-minded Americans coming together to vote outside of the establishment-mandated candidates. And they're looking to people like Ted Cruz and Rand Paul who have respect for the Constitution and respect for the Bill of Rights. And I think that that is a hopeful sign. And people need to know that SGT Report is not just a doom and gloom website. We constantly report good news. We try to provide solutions. We interview people like Harley Schlanger, who talks about reinstating Glass-Steagall and impeaching Obama as a solution. What do we get in the comments? Oh, it's too late for Glass-Steagall. Oh, you know, impeaching Obama is an impossibility. We interview guys like Peter Schiff about free markets, smaller government, and personal responsibility. James Wesley Rawls about prepping for anything that comes our way. James Turk and Mike Maloney on owning physical precious metals as a solution to financial collapse. Richard Grove about using logic and the trivium to discern reality and understand the matrix. Dan Johnson, a young man from Panda, about saying no to the NDAA and getting that thing dismantled. And so I just want to paint the picture for people that I am hopeful, I'm going to remain hopeful, and I am not going to be an absolutist that throws guys like Rand Paul and Ted Cruz under the bus when they're the only representatives in government that are standing up to the NSA and standing up to these unconstitutional endless wars without end and standing up to this criminal government and the imposter in chief in the White House. So I'm sort of going to rant, but I really wanted to lead with that because I think the results at CPAC and then the Drudge Report poll are significant. And I wanted your take on that.
Oh, absolutely. And you really can't talk about revolution without there being some type of leadership in place. We had Thomas Jefferson for leadership in our first revolution. We had George Washington, and we had thinkers like Thomas Paine that were trying to get the information out there and get people to start thinking about being a free people and governing themselves. And you have to have leadership, and anybody that's going to completely strike down everybody that rises up to try to be a leader as just being another shill, I don't know what they think they're going to get. What are you going to end up with? Anarchy. And I don't want to live in that,
Yeah,
I'm not real happy about the state of my freedom right now under what we have, but I don't want to go out of the frying pan and into the fire, into anarchy either.
Well, this is war, right? We are at war in this country, right? We're at war for the soul of the nation. And I will continue to support Ron Paul and his son Rand Paul, who, now look at it this way, if Rand Paul got into the White House, who would be a better friend of liberty? Obama? Hillary Clinton? Huh? Would Chris Christie or Jeb Bush be the better alternative? Or Rand Paul, whose advisor would not be the CFR? It would be Ron Paul, his father. I mean, you got to look at the voting record. You got to look at the, the heritage. You got to look at, the fact that the man appreciates the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. Now, you can say he's sold out. You can say he's a controlled opposition. That's fine. But if you're going to take that absolutist stance on Glass-Steagall, on any of these solutions that I've just talked about, then you're part of the problem. You're not part of the solution. Because these people in the comment section at SGT Report saying, Rand Paul's a hack and what we need is a revolution. Well, let's talk about revolution. What do we see in the Ukraine? We see NGOs fomenting all sorts of war. We see Blackwater is now on the ground in Ukraine. The reports are. Do you think that a revolution, should it come to that in this country, a violent revolution, is anything that any of us want any part of? No, and what I see is a grassroots organization coming together of liberty-minded, constitutional-minded people that want to take the government back. And that is the war. It's the war of minds, right? And I think we're winning that war for the hearts and minds of American people who are waking up.
Absolutely. And I think
that's my point. That's our future.
I think we saw that Washington's actually starting to pay attention when people started contacting their representatives about the involvement in Syria, and we actually changed our position and we didn't go into Syria. It was one of the first times in recent history that we've decided not to get involved in somebody else's business in another civil war on the other side of the world.
That's right. That's absolutely right. And who was on the side of liberty? Who was on the side of our sovereign nation? Who was on the side of not going into Syria? Ted Cruz, Rand Paul. Who was on the opposite side? Guys like John Kerry, Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton, wants to be president in 2016. The establishment would love that to be so. So my question is a very, very pragmatic one to the commenters there at SGT Report is, all right, fine. Say what you want about Rand Paul, but what looks better for the country in 2016? Rand Paul or Ted Cruz in the White House or Hillary Clinton? You got to be pragmatic when it comes to fighting for this nation, right? And I see some really positive signs. People are waking up. And if you want to talk about Connecticut gun registration, this all ties in together. Who would be better in the White House right now, Mark? Ron Paul, who they stole the election from? If everybody thinks Ron Paul was controlled opposition, then why in God's name did the media and the corrupt GOP establishment work day and night by stealing straw poll election results, by stealing everything that they could, by stealing the limelight in the media and never mentioning his name? If he's such a bought and paid for, part of the team, then why did they not want him in the White House? And who would be better in the White House now, Barack Obama or Ron Paul? because you mentioned Connecticut gun registration, and everybody ought to know that before State Bill 1160 became law, that 140-page monstrosity, the unconstitutional piece of trash that it is, 4 days before it became law, Barack Obama was in Connecticut praising it as, quote, a model for the nation. That's what we're up against. And I ask again, who would be better in the White House right now? Controlled opposition? Ron Paul? Or Barack Obama, man who's, we don't even know where he was born or who his father is. At least with Rand Paul, we know exactly who his father is.
We sure do. and Dr. Ron Paul was certainly very instrumental in my awakening, because I'll have to admit, I was pretty much a sold out neocon, and I read Revolution by Ron Paul, and then Liberty Defined, and then I just started reading his books and listening to him talk, and started paying a lot of attention to him, and and I started to realize that there's other choices out there besides just chocolate and vanilla, and I can actually start to formulate my own thoughts, and that's okay, and people do that, and I think that Rand Paul is certainly the closest choice we have to Dr. Paul's ideology. So,
yeah, and I'm not endorsing.
And I have a lot of hopes for him, and I'll say that. And I only voted once, but I did vote on the Drudge poll that you spoke about, and I did vote for Rand Paul and the Drudge straw, because I certainly think that he's the best horse we've got in the field there.
Yeah, and it's just, again, it just comes down to the fact that if you're going to be an absolutist on everything, then you're not going to help us get anything done. Because, again, I've interviewed guys like Tom Woods on nullification. Oh, nullification's not the answer. We need a revolution. I've interviewed guys like Harley Schlanger about re-implementing Glass-Steagall. Oh, the Glass-Steagall, it's too late for that. You get these people that are absolute defeatists, and it makes me realize that I still got a lot of fight left in me, because the people really make my blood boil, because they are not part of the solution, they're part of the problem. And it makes me wonder if these aren't some of the same people that would foment, right, like NGO type people that are hired to go into the comment sections and foment this type of vitriol and foment this type of infighting, and keep people from coming together, right? And try to push us toward that violent revolution, which none of us want, and none of the people we admire have, advocated for. We want a peaceful revolution of the minds. We've got the better ideas. Liberty is the idea that will win this war, and it's winning. It's winning. That's why the Drudge Report, with over 250,000 respondents, sees the two guys standing for the Constitution rise to the top. Meanwhile, the establishment hacks like Chris Christie, Marco Rubio, and Jeb Bush are at the bottom of the heap.
Yeah, I was watching a film by Naomi Wolf last night, and it was an older film from, I think, 2008, from the Bush years, and of course she was, very critical on all of the atrocities that the Bush regime committed against the Constitution. But one of the things that she spoke about was government infiltration, and one of the things that they'll do is just stick naysayers into every group that's trying to get anything accomplished, and,
yeah, that's right.
and to cause division and cause infighting amongst the other members. So that's it's a classical tactic.
Well, and it's also on the record. We saw that in the latest leak from the Snowden documents and Glenn Greenwald. Now, there's another case where anytime I report anything Glenn Greenwald is saying, suddenly he's controlled opposition. And see, here's the problem. We live in a very, very complex world, and there are people out there that if you're not bashing Jews all day, then you're not speaking truth. If you're not talking about the Bilderberg Group 24/7. Now, the Bilderberg Group, the CFR, the Rockefeller Rothschild, control of the media. I talk about all of it. But you get people who are absolutists that will respond to one story, and they want to hang everybody out on one story, right? We live in far too complex a world to get hung up on any one story. Just because I wrote today about what the CPAC results were and that the Drudge Report results mirror that, doesn't mean I'm endorsing Rand Paul. I'm just reporting the fact that there's a sea change happening, and I think that there's a lot more hope than people want to let on. Some people don't want to hear about the hope.
Yeah, and you're right, and we got to keep fighting and hoping, because otherwise we've really got nothing left, and it's probably better to just go find another country.
Yeah, there's no other country to run to. I mean, which one would you run to if you had to go somewhere?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is about the last bastion for freedom. So we either stand and die here with pride, or just exist as a slave.
Yeah, I mean, it's still the greatest country on the planet in terms of liberty, and I mean, we've got the Bill of Rights, right? I often say when I interview a controversial guest and controversial, scary stuff comes up, and we talk about the NDAA, we talk about whatever, we talk about dead bankers, and I say, look, I'm going to continue to explore these topics and talk about them as long as I have a Second Amendment, as long as I have a First Amendment, right? If I have my First Amendment, my right to free speech, and they haven't officially taken it away, I'm going to use it, and we still have those precious documents in this country, and that's what those people at CPAC are fighting for. So if you're going to sit in your armchair and be a Monday morning quarterback in the comments section, I don't have a lot of respect for you because you weren't at CPAC. You're not probably one of those grassroots people who's trying to fight for change, and maybe you ought to be. Maybe you ought to take a look in the mirror and ask yourself, am I doing everything I can do to make this country the best country on the face of the planet? Am I doing everything I can to throw off tyranny and take our country back? Am I? Because if you're not, then you probably should, watch what you say in your comment section. And you say what you want, I really don't care, but you should probably choose your words more carefully because to me, you make yourself look really foolish.
And like we said, a lot of them may be agents or government shills. So
yeah,
because we know they use that tactic to discredit and cause division.
Yeah, it's on the record. They do. And it's just something that we have to deal with. I mean, we're up against it in this country because the military industrial complex, the Pentagon gets, what's their budget, Mark? $650 billion a year?
Well, if you include the DOD spending and the black box spending, it's close to $1 trillion annually.
So I guess, my question for you, I respect your opinion on this. That's why I wanted to bring it up because I refuse to let myself be put in a box by people who want me to see the world in any one way. I mean, I've got a wide variety of sources that I rely on, evergreen sources whose, the trees bear fruit. I believe that I understand a lot more about how the world works than most people, certainly the sheeple people. Now that said, everything we've just talked about, could you see getting behind a Ted Cruz or could you see getting behind a Rand Paul in 2016? And I don't want to be a lesser of evils guy, but to your point, they are definitely the cleanest dirty shirts.
Yeah, I'm a big Rand Paul fan. I was a little disappointed when he gave his approval to Mitch McConnell, which I think is one of the gatekeepers of the neocon class. And I suspect that he did that because he realized that the Tea Party candidate in Kentucky that was fighting for McConnell's seat had absolutely no chance, and to not do that would be tantamount to giving the seat to the Democratic Party. I'm not really sure why he did that, but everything else he's done, I've been very, very impressed with. I was very impressed with his stand that he took over domestic drones and his stand that's been against the NSA. I'm a staunch pro-lifer myself, and Rand Paul is very, very staunchly pro-life, just like Ron Paul was. And I think that he's our best chance for liberty, and that's who I'll be voting for. And I'll officially endorse him from PrepperRecon.com that's who I'll be voting for. And I think he's our best chance. And I'm not the guy that thinks that it doesn't matter if you vote because all the votes were rigged and if that's true, because I can't prove it, because I don't have the hard evidence sitting in front of me, it's still my duty to get up and go out and vote and try.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. And, like I said, I haven't endorsed Rand Paul, and he's done troubling things. I was as pissed at Rand Paul as anybody when he endorsed Mitt Romney when his father was still in the running for president, because it was, at that point, all was lost for Ron Paul because they stole the election. They stole the nomination from him. I've got plenty of issues with Rand Paul. And that's really the point of my article. Again, it wasn't a pro-Rand Paul article. It was a pro-Constitution Bill of Rights sea change article. And that's the bottom line. I mean, we're in a lot better shape if we can keep Jeb Bush. You know, think about that, the Bush-Clinton dynasty. Do you realize that we could, if they want to steal this thing and steer it that way again, they could present us with a Jeb Bush-Hillary Clinton ticket in 2016? Is that not the most astounding thing?
That would mean there would be 3 sitting Skull and Bones members, 4 sitting Skull and Bones members in the White House in my lifetime, if we got Jeb Bush in there, because I'm pretty sure he was in that club as well.
Yeah. Well, it's that Bush.
Because his brother and his father certainly were. It's
the Bush-Clinton CIA, dynasty. I mean, that's what it is. I mean,
and Clinton was
Skull
and Bones as well.
Yeah, that's right. Well, Obama's a CIA-created, artifact. I'm not even sure who he is. But, yeah, I mean, that's my point. So we can get off of this thing, and, I'm sorry to dwell on it for so long for the listeners who are bored and disagree with me, but I just truly think we all need to keep open minds and stay true to our ideals. And what are the ideals? Respecting the Bill of Rights, respecting the Constitution, and restoring rule of law. If we can do that, our country is saved. If we can do that and curb spending and do all these other things, we can save our nation. But of course, maybe I'm just a naive optimist. It's possible.
Well, yeah, but you gotta keep hope. That's one of the things they say in survivalism. You can go 3 minutes without air, 3 days without water, 3 weeks without food, and about 3 months without hope. So you need hope. It's important. That's absolutely something we have to hang on to is hope.
Yeah.
Now back to Connecticut.
Mm-hmm.
Now, do you think it's ironic that this battle over firearms is happening in a state whose border is less than 50 miles away from the site of a very historic fight against gun confiscation at Lexington and Concord, Massachusetts?
Mm-hmm. Well, it is an interesting historical fact, isn't it? I think the other thing that's interesting is that, Sandy Hook is one of those events around which there will always be questions. They've destroyed the school. All record of the evidence has been destroyed about what went on there. And, it's ground zero in this fight for liberty. And I think that that's not overstating the fact when you look at the fact that more than 100,000 Connecticut residents have not registered their guns as required under this unconstitutional law, which has now made them felons in the eyes of this really rogue state. And it really is ground zero in the fight for liberty, because as I've always said, the only reason we have our First Amendment is because we have our Second Amendment, and we cannot give up our Second Amendment rights. The minute we do that, we've lost the war. So these people in Connecticut who have bravely decided not to register their weapons despite a state bill enforcing it and making them do it, they're real patriots because they're standing for all of us. And hopefully the law is completely unenforceable. I mean, if 100,000 people haven't registered their weapons, then it is unenforceable. And it's ground zero. So it's really an important story.
Yeah, they'd really have to open up the FEMA camps to lock up that many people, wouldn't they?
Well, they can't go door to door. And so one wonders how this will resolve itself. What they ought to be doing is impeaching the governor. They ought to be repealing the law. I know that there was a movement, all of the names of the legislators who voted for this thing, their names and home addresses were all put on websites. These people need to be made, they need to be challenged for what they've done, and they need to be voted out. They need to, the governor needs to be impeached, and the people of Connecticut need to stand up. Again, I think this is, Obama and his bully pulpit, they shoved this down the throats of the citizens of Connecticut, and 100,000 of them have said, well, this is our line in the sand. And, the rest of us ought to have gratitude, that they're doing that.
Absolutely. And then not too far away is Boston. And we're coming up on the anniversary of the Boston Marathon, which, if you were the evil ruler of a government and you wanted to create a more compliant society, one of the things you could do would be to stage an event like the Boston bombing. It'd give you a reason to conduct a house-to-house warrantless search, and by doing it in a very liberal, very compliant part of the country like Boston, you could be sure that a very well-conditioned population would set a good example to the rest of the country by by just simply complying and turning over their Fourth Amendment rights.
Well, that's what they did, and I'd like to see them try that in Texas. I mean, again, it gets back to this idea of Tom Woods talked about nullification. I think at this point, the states with the rational people, they're the states that ought to be taking, they should be nullifying federal laws. They should be taking the power back, and the movement is, alive and well across the country. In Connecticut, I think there's a lot of people waking up. Previously maybe liberal-minded people are maybe waking up in Connecticut now that they see that this unconstitutional government has made them felons. I mean, can you imagine that? They have Second Amendment rights, right? It can't be just legislated away by state government. So it's an unconstitutional law, and now this unconstitutional law on the books has made formerly legal, law-abiding citizens felons. I mean, that only happens in a banana republic. That only happens in a criminally corrupt place like Connecticut or, the United States at large if the federal government tried to do that. And, what would happen if Connecticut signed into law a piece of legislation requiring every new wife and husband, a young couple with their firstborn, they'd be required to give up their firstborn son to the state? Would we stand for that? Just because they pass it into law, does it make it, legal in the eyes of natural law? No, it's completely criminal and it needs to be stood up to. And again, I just have so much gratitude for the 100,000 people in Connecticut who are now willing to become felons in the eyes of this state, in order to stand up for their Second Amendment rights and ours.
But the day of giving up your children, that may be in their doorstep as well. We had the mother in California last year who refused to let her child go straight into surgery without a second opinion, and Department of Children and Family Services came with the police and jerked that infant out of that mother's arms. And then there's the little girl in New England, Justina, I can't remember her last name, but she's been taken away from her parents because she was misdiagnosed, and then they took her to another doctor who said that she was abused because she was misdiagnosed. And the parents have been fighting for more than a year to try to get custody back of their sick and possibly dying child. And it's absolutely appalling what's going on in our society and what's tolerated.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it really is. Hey, have you been following the Fukushima story? Does Fukushima concern you?
I don't see anything on Fox or CNN or MSNBC about it. So can we start surfing in California? Can we go pick up some fresh sushi straight out of the Pacific, Sean? What's going on over there?
I was having dinner with a friend the other night. My wife and I went out with a couple of friends, and we were talking about Fukushima. And the fella in the couple that we were out with was telling me that he thinks Fukushima's overstated, and he was talking about going out for sushi and not worrying about it. And I just thought it's just so crazy, because why wouldn't you want to know the truth about Fukushima? Why wouldn't you want to know where your sushi comes from? And if you're going to eat sushi, maybe you ought to be getting it out of the Atlantic instead of the Pacific. I don't know. I think being willfully ignorant does not give you a veil of protection from reality. Again, I like to talk about reality. And the reality of the Fukushima situation is that, well, here's one for you. The mainstream media did report today, and we put this at SGT Report. USA Today is reporting this weekend that Fukushima radiation will hit the West Coast next month. It is a reality that the Fukushima situation is out of control. It has not been fixed. Helen Keldicott, who we have interviewed, has said it is scientifically impossible to clean up what has already happened. In my most recent interview with Hatrick Penry, who people would recognize from YouTube, he's put together a great 445-page PDF document called Plumegate, which is filled with governmental FOIA documents, regulatory and governmental documents, showing that the powers that be knew and know that the situation in Fukushima is far more serious than they said at the beginning or they're saying now. So, Fukushima is a big deal, and unfortunately, unlike just about anything else, even oil spills, even some of these other things that are really catastrophes, nuclear radiation and cesium and plutonium and all that being spewed into the environment in the ocean is irreparable. It's really Armageddon level stuff because it cannot be cleaned up and it cannot be fixed. And the fact that the mainstream Mockingbird dinosaur media really refuses to cover it or report on it accurately or fairly is just beyond the pale, because it's an important topic. And again, most of the people that I know kind of don't really know very much about it or think that it's not a problem, like my friend who'll eat sushi from wherever he finds it.
And I guess the motivation for ignoring the story is that there's not really anything they can do about it, and if they start talking about it too much, it's likely to incite panic on the West Coast. Probably kill real estate. I guess there's a lot of moneyed people that stand to lose a lot if it really becomes a mainstream issue.
Yeah, and probably the nuclear industry itself. I mean, very, very deep pockets, and they're not going to want to close down any nuclear power plants around the planet. They're just not going to do it. And I guess as Einstein said, it's a hell of a way to boil water. And as Helen Caldicott said, it's a clean source of energy until it becomes dirty, and then it's the dirtiest source of energy on the planet. I mean, it's a nightmare, and that's the problem. Fukushima, the reason they don't want to report on it is they don't want the world to realize how catastrophic these meltdowns can be and are. And if Unit 3 and 4 melted down, as Hattrick Penry and the documents seem to indicate, it's far worse than Chernobyl, and they're not reporting on it.
Now, speaking of deep pockets, have you been keeping track with the dead bankers? What's going on now? Why do they not think that life's worth living anymore?
Well, I'm not sure what's going on with the dead bankers, but as I've said time and time again, I think if you look at a insurance actuary table, you'd find it very unlikely that, say, two J.P. Morgan high-level bankers, Ryan Henry Crane, and who was the other one? Gabriel McGee. You look at these actuary tables, and it would be very unlikely that both would die from quote-unquote suicides or by leaping off the top of the European headquarters, to kill themselves within a week or two. It's just unlikely. And then you add to that guys like Richard Talley, the 57-year-old founder of American Title Services in Colorado, who was found dead, they say, by a suicide after shooting himself 8 or 9 times with a nail gun. Are we buying this? It just is, it's the type of thing that I think you can only see that only happens during a economic meltdown, a banking meltdown, when the banks need to cover their tracks because they do not want witnesses called to testify against their criminality. That's my conclusion. Doesn't mean I'm right. But again, I think if you look at statistical actuary tables, you would find the deaths of all these young, healthy bankers to be a little questionable. And I've said it's kind of scary, I think, right now to be a high-level banker. Previously, one of the world's most dangerous careers was being a deep-sea oil rig scuba diver. And I think that's now been eclipsed by being a high-level criminal banking head. So these guys may want to retire early if they can.
Yeah, that takes a lot of conviction to shoot yourself 8 times with a nail gun. Now, is this possible that suicide, these suicidal tendencies, is that a communicable disease? Because now we've got Autumn Rake she was the CEO of the Bitcoin exchange First Meta, and 28 years old, and she also committed suicide.
Yeah, that's what they're saying. They say that she died under mysterious circumstances at her home in Singapore. Yeah, I don't know anything about Autumn Radke, and I don't know anything about First Meta. But again, it is interesting. I'm not sure what type of secrets a cryptocurrency CEO would have, but who knows? Who knows? I mean, it's just a crazy time. I mean, Mt. Gox closed, and I think that's an interesting story. I don't impugn the whole Bitcoin world because Mt. Gox closed. The way I look at that is that it's more synonymous with Bernie Madoff stealing your money. I mean, I don't think it's the money's fault. It's Bernie Madoff's fault. And in this case, I don't think Bitcoin was necessarily at fault. I think it's Mt. Gox having lacked security that's at fault. So this whole Bitcoin cryptocurrency story continues to be interesting, but I still wonder who is behind it, and I really do wonder if this wasn't. You want to talk about controlled opposition? What if this was sort of a controlled idea that was fostered by the intelligence agencies. You know, let's get this cryptocurrency thing out there and then control it, because maybe they saw in their modeling and everything else that they've got, they saw the future coming. They saw this as a possibility, and maybe they got out ahead of it. And, you know, maybe at the end of the day, most of these cryptocurrencies are operated or, you know, originated from intelligence agencies. I don't think we know, you know, we don't really know who created, Bitcoin. So who knows? It's an interesting story though.
Yeah, 500 million in Bitcoin stolen, and it was touted as being one of the most safe, secure, forms of currencies that you could have, and untraceable, I'm like you, I don't think I really buy all of that.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, the cryptocurrencies are interesting, and I don't have a blanket, you know, again, I try to be pragmatic about these things, and I think the, Bitcoin and the cryptocurrency story is an interesting one. It's an alternative to a fiat criminally corrupt bankster dollar, and I think we do need to you know, diversify away from these criminal central banks. And if cryptocurrencies are the answer, I don't know. I think that'll be judged. History will make that decision, but I don't impugn the effort. I don't have any problem with the cryptocurrencies, although I'm a bigger fan of physical precious metals.
Yeah, absolutely. It's got a lot better track record, doesn't it? 6,000 years now that it's been considered money. It goes all the way back to the beginning of time. Genesis 13:2 says Abraham was rich in cattle and silver and gold. So it's been a store of wealth since the beginning of time.
Well, and perhaps more importantly for those that want to look at the precious metals as an opportunity to not only shield wealth and protect wealth from a meltdown and from the criminal banking institutions and from the Myra and from the criminal Wall Street institutions that want to take what you have and take your paper wealth. In addition to that, we now know beyond a shadow of a doubt, we know for a fact that the precious metals are manipulated. We know that BAFTA, the German regulator, has said that silver and gold are manipulated at least as severely as LIBOR manipulation. You know, we know that there's a gold price fix twice a day, and there's a similar price fix for silver, and it's set by these criminal banking institutions. And we know that they sell, buy and sell, but mostly sell billions of paper ounces of these precious metals into the markets every year, far more than is physically mined out of the earth. And that's an interesting story to me. That's a story that needs to be told, and sooner or later we will see real world values for these precious metals. I'm not sure when. I'm done guessing, because it seems they string these things along forever with silver in the 22s. I mean, it wasn't that long ago silver was at 50, but boy, it sure feels a while ago now.
Well, anytime they can manipulate the price down below the cost of production, I think that it's a no-brainer as a buy.
Yeah. Yeah, I do too, and I think it's a great way to look at it. The other thing that I do, again, being pragmatic, is that I always welcome new people into the story and say, well, you know, be thankful you're not me buying at 48. And I started buying when silver was down at 10 and 11 and 12. But it went all the way up to 48, 49, 50, and then again it plummeted, and I was buying all the way up and buying all the way back down because I'm a big dollar cost averager. I like to buy some more every month, every couple of months, regardless of the price. And so for anybody new to the game, boy, you're getting in at a really nice price here. You're getting, in around or below the cost of production. And you didn't have to suffer all the pains of that manipulation, that criminal Wall Street manipulation that crashed it. I think it was May 11th, 2011, or was it May 1st? 2011, that silver was at 48, and on a Sunday night it plummeted. It was maybe 49, and it plummeted $6 in a matter of minutes. Maybe it was seconds. And that had never been seen before. They took the price down some 15% in a matter of seconds, and it was a slippery slope on down for about the next year, all the way back down to the mid-20s. So it's been a painful run, and we all know, you know, who's to blame. Not that the CFTC will hold anybody accountable, but we know the truth, and so we stay the course, and we continue to, at least me, I'd like the dollar cost average, just buy a little bit more whenever I can.
And at the end of the day, it's insurance, and unlike your car insurance, and unlike your house insurance, and unlike your health insurance, that once you spend it, it's gone. Even though you spent it and maybe you paid a little bit higher premium, that insurance and the value is still there. And, you know, and yeah, it's painful until the ATM doesn't work and there's a 2-mile line around the outside of the bank, and the grocery shelves are cleared off, and the world descends into economic chaos.
Yeah, I do. It's interesting. If you look at the Indians, the way they buy gold jewelry and they spend lots and lots of money on that type of thing. And if you look at it, they look at it as an investment, and it's such a great way to spend money to go, well, I want to buy a luxury item. This is the way they look at it in India. I want to buy this beautiful necklace to show my wealth and to illustrate my love for my wife or my family, or, my daughter's getting married, et cetera, et cetera. That's wealth that stays within the family. So when we talk about buying physical precious metals, it's a kind of a neat thing to do, because you're spending money, but you're building an asset. You now have an asset. So when you go to the bank someday and you need a loan, not that we want to take a loan from a criminal bank, if you go to a credit union, you want to take a loan, and they say, well, what assets do you have? What collateral do you have? If you've got $30,000 or whatever you have in physical precious metals, that is a real asset that banks actually respect. You know why? Because it's real money. It's a real tangible asset, like land. So it's a big deal. It's neat. I really, really like the precious metals story because it's empowering.
And we've gotten some pretty decent economic data since the last time we talked. Unemployment's now down to 6.7%. Everybody's supposed to be getting free health care. I didn't get mine yet. In fact, we had to drop our coverage because it more than tripled. But I just know that that's all going to get worked out. And Sean, when it does, I'm going to have prenatal coverage, because I wasn't eligible for that before Obamacare. I don't know if it's because of my age or maybe it's because I'm a man, but nobody would give me prenatal coverage before.
Well, aren't you lucky? Yeah, it's really great that the government is giving people something for nothing, because we all know that there can be things that are free, like free doctor visits and free prenatal care. I mean, the reality is, Mark, and you know this, and I know everybody listening knows this, but there's no free lunch. And what they need to do in a collectivist system to give these freebies away is they need to take from those who produce and give to those who don't produce. That is what collectivism is. That's the heart of communism. That is the path we're on. And with a man in the White House like Barack Obama, or a woman in the White House in 2016 like Hillary Clinton, you're just going to get more of the same, which kind of brings us full circle back to guys like Rand Paul or Ted Cruz. Say what you want about them. Feel free. But please, know that they are a much better alternative should we want to take back our country and liberty and free markets and rule of law. They're much better alternatives than Chris Christie, Marco Rubio, or Jeb Bush.
And for the neocon out there that's still sleeping, that just hasn't woken up to the fact that we have this nearly $1 trillion defense budget, when you can consider the DoD budget and the off balance sheet spending through all of the black box stuff the CIA does. Rand Paul's putting that message on Fox. So people that would never listen to Prepper Recon, they'll never listen to SGT Report, and Fox is the only place they get their news. They're getting that message from Rand Paul right now.
Yeah, that's right.
And it's the only place they would have ever got it, because they're not going to get it from Rush Limbaugh. Judge Napolitano's been kicked off of Fox. Glenn Beck, which, I'm not 100% in love with his delivery method, but he gets some good information out from time to time. He was kicked off of Fox. Stossel, you don't see him on Fox anymore. So Rand Paul's one of the few people that are out there that are going to get that message out to the few people that may still wake up in the future.
Yeah. Well, again, I think we've come full circle, and we didn't get a chance to talk about the Ukraine. Maybe we're going to talk about that next time, but I think it warrants being said that, there continues to be a place in the world for websites like Zero Hedge, SGT Report, InfoWars, BeforeIt'sNews.com, your site, because, what's going on in the Ukraine, we see Blackwater and Crimea now, and the snipers. Remember when the snipers were shooting protesters? Yes. It is now on the record that those snipers were hired by the new government, the government supported by this nation's leaders, not Yanukovych And that was not reported on by CNN or Fox News. That should have been leading news and a couple days ago, and it was not. It was mainly only covered by the alternative media. Why is that? Well, because there's a lot more going on in Ukraine than meets the eye, and the Mockingbird mainstream controlled dinosaur media and the powers that be in this government do not want the American public to know the truth, just like they didn't want the public to know the truth about Syria. But thank God there is a sea change going on, and again, full circle, sea change, liberty, Constitution, Bill of Rights. People got fed up, even people that couldn't articulate all the things we've talked about today, Mark. They got fed up with the Syrian war drums crap coming out of John Kerry and Barack Obama, and the American people stood up and said, hell no. And the powers that be had to back down. And now we're not in Syria. We don't have troops on the ground in Syria. And that's a victory. That is what I'm talking about. I don't think it's too late to re-implement Glass-Steagall. I don't think it's too late to try to impeach Barack Obama. I don't think it's too late to respect the Bill of Rights and the Constitution. I don't think it's too late. And you can call me a cup half full guy if you want. Call me naive if you want. That's where I stand, because I'm not going to be a doom and gloomer all day. I want to take our country back, and I want to take it back peacefully. So we need to embrace the opportunities to do that where we see them.
And Sean will have links to SGT Report, and then we'll also have links to your news aggregation site for alternative news, the Liberty Mill. But now for the folks listening on iTunes, Stitcher, and YouTube, can you tell them where they can find your online resources?
Well, yeah, thanks, man. I would help me understand. Does this go on iTunes for you? I want to do that, and I don't know how to do that, and I need to get that set up because, the YouTube channel is where people primarily see all of my original interviews. But I don't have, an easy MP3 download thing set up. Do you put your interviews on iTunes?
Yeah, I do. You got to produce it as a podcast, which you've already got your recordings and everything, and then I'll give you some. I'll shoot you some links over and things for that.
Okay, well, cool. I've learned.
But you're at sgtreport.com, right?
Yep, sgtreport.com would be the website. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. We try to bring you real news, the antidote to corporate propaganda, and of course, the libertymill.com, which is a really nifty site. If you check that out and you hover over the links, a little synopsis. Hover over the link and a little synopsis of each news story will pop up, so then you can decide if you want to click through or not. It's a really nifty site, and we appreciate everybody's support. We appreciate everybody who's willing to stand up for the Constitution and the Bill of Rights, because you know what? It's not a part-time job. It's not an armchair quarterback job. It's a big deal. It's a full-time job, and I really respect those that are out there doing it, the people that are really doing the grassroots work. They really deserve our respect.
Well, Sean, thanks again for taking time to come on the show today.
Well, thank you, Mark.
Hey, Preppers and Patriots. American Meltdown, the long-awaited sequel to American Exit Strategy, is now available in Kindle and paperback. In American Meltdown, Book 2 of the Economic Collapse Chronicles, the new president, Anthony Howe, signs an executive order banning all semi-automatic weapons. Matt, Adam, and Wesley Baer begin training with their local militia for the battle that is coming. Within weeks of the inauguration, the $700 trillion derivatives bubble pops when rates on U.S. debt skyrocket. The derivatives crisis is the final nail in the coffin of the banking system and the death of the fiat currency system in America. With the dollar gone, commerce comes to a screeching halt. While times prove to be tough for all, survival favors the prepared. Get your Kindle or paperback copy of American Meltdown, Book 2 of the Economic Collapse Chronicles on